You ever been there? You're staring down a huge, high-stakes problem and you just freeze. The pressure's on, all the options get blurry, and suddenly you feel totally and completely stuck. First, your mind just starts racing, right? You're completely overwhelmed by how big the whole situation feels. And then confusion kicks in. All this conflicting info, all these different ways it could go, it's a mess.
And finally, you're paralyzed, just unable to make a move, totally trapped by the fear of making the wrong one. Well, what if I told you there's a way out of that spiral? Today, we're diving into a framework designed to do exactly that. It's a powerful method all about strategic action and using a matrix to resolve a crisis. Basically, a way to cut through all that noise when it matters the most.
Okay, so let's break this down. We gotta understand why this happens in the first place. What's actually going on in our heads in those high-pressure moments? You see, a crisis isn't just a big problem. It's a state of mind where our normal decision-making system just kind of shuts down.
And that really just nails it, doesn't it? The sheer weight of the moment makes every little choice feel massive and super risky. It's a feeling we've all had.
But here's the big question. What if you had a tool that could act like a compass in that storm? A structured way to navigate the panic and actually find a clear path forward? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into.
This is where we make the big shift from just feeling overwhelmed to actually being focused. This whole crisis problem-solving approach is about moving away from knee-jerk reactions and towards deliberate, strategic action. It's really about taking back control. And what's so cool is how this slide lays it all out. On the left, you've got the default crisis mode. Panic, guesswork, just going on impulse. But on the right, that's the goal. Clarity, analysis, and control. This framework we're talking about, it's the bridge that gets you from that chaotic side over to the calm one.
So how in the world do we build that bridge? Well, it all starts by creating a blueprint. And here's the key. Instead of desperately searching for that one single perfect solution, we're going to start by identifying 3 different kinds of action plans.
And honestly, this is a total game changer. You don't have to pick the right answer right away. The very first step is just to see the different roads you could take. Just doing that alone starts to reduce the panic and gives you back a sense of control.
The point here is that each of these plans does a totally different job. Think of the immediate plan as your firefighter. Its job is to put out the fire, to stop the bleeding right now. The strategic pivot is like your navigator. It helps you adjust your course as things change. And the long-term plan? That's your architect. It's there to rebuild things even stronger, so this whole crisis doesn't happen all over again.
Okay, so now you've got 3 potential plans. Awesome. But that brings up a new problem, right? How do you actually choose which one to go with? This is where our second tool comes into play, the decision matrix. It's how we go from having a bunch of options to making a choice you can feel good about. You can pretty much think of this as a scorecard for your ideas. It just takes all the emotion and the guesswork out of the decision. Why? Because it forces you to sit down and define what good actually looks like. And then you just score your plans against that definition. And this is a perfect, simple example of how it works. So look here. First, we decide what matters. In this case, it's speed, cost, and how well it'll work in the long run. Then, we just score each plan on a scale of 1 to 3. So plan A, our quick fix, gets a high score for speed and cost, but a low one for long-term viability. When you add it all up, plan A comes out on top. See? It's clear. The best path forward becomes logical. No more agonizing over it. So, let's pull this all together. We've just built ourselves a really powerful toolkit for dealing with crazy, complex situations. And this isn't just some one-time trick. It's a process you can use over and over again to turn that feeling of panic into a solid, concrete plan. So just to recap the journey here, you start by just acknowledging the chaos. Then, you make that mental shift from being reactive to being strategic. You create options with those 3 action plans. And then, you use the decision matrix to pick your path, using data, not drama. And what's the end result? Confidence. And that really is the main takeaway. The next time you feel that icy feeling of indecision start to creep in, you actually have the tools to break right through it. You can go from being a victim of the situation to being the architect of the solution. So, I'll just leave you with this to think about. Whether it's a big project at work or a personal crossroads you're facing, what's the first challenge you're going to tackle? Not with panic, but with a plan.